To be with you all this morning. Last week, we finished up a series of looking at the Beatitudes. But the Beatitudes are just the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, a study that we've been doing on the Sermon on the Mount. This morning, we're going to finish up basically the introduction part of the Sermon on the Mount, which we've been looking at for quite some time now. So, let's get into the text here. This is probably the last time we're able to read the entirety of the text. We've, up until then, 16 verses is probably about my limit. And some of you may be like, yeah, Michael, don't read so much. But let's go ahead and get into the text here. Seeing the crowd, Jesus went up on the mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him and he began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you, persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how will its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world, and a city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but upon a stand, and it gives light to everyone who is in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." So as we've looked at the Beatitudes, these 8 blessings that Jesus pronounces at the beginning of his sermon, we have seen the different mindset that Jesus has called his followers to have. Blessed, well off, fortunate are you when you are poor, when you mourn, when you're in need, when you have to be a peacemaker, when you are persecuted. These are not normally things we consider to be blessings, and yet Jesus says they are blessings. Jesus is calling the people to a different mindset. He's calling his followers to be kingdom people, people of the kingdom of heaven. And it requires a different mindset. And Jesus continues that in this upside-down kingdom that he is proclaiming. And it's one of the reasons why the Sermon on the Mount is really encapsulating of the teaching and the ministry of Jesus, because it begins and it starts off this upside-down way of thinking that is so contrary to the way of the world. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth." You are the salt of the earth. Now the question we have to ask is, what kind of salt are you? Are you Himalayan salt? Are you sea salt? Are you kosher salt? And that's not quite what Jesus meant. But salt has so many different attributes, so many different benefits. One of the big attributes of salt is its flavor. It enhances flavor, right? It gives life flavor. Some of you, when you sit down at a meal, the first thing you do is grab the salt shaker and you just pour it on, right? And half of the chefs in here are now offended, right? Because you didn't even taste it. Didn't need salt, but it did need salt, right? Never salted enough. Except for that one time that you over-salt a meal, right? But salt, it enhances flavor. But salt does so much more. Before the age of refrigeration, salt would preserve. It had the ability to pull moisture out of the meat and preserve the meat. I'm going to be real mean to y'all. This last week, I saw a video of a guy who had put several pounds of salt on his brisket. and had cooked his brisket in the salt. Now, you say that's weird, but that's what this is, and it creates this coating, and it keeps all the juices inside. He's like, it didn't taste salty at all. Right? It's this process of preserving meat so that it has a longer shelf life, so that it can be enjoyed later on. Otherwise, you have to have the meat fresh, and you have to consume the meat quickly. Otherwise, it goes bad. Right? And all that meat then is wasted. So the value of salt has been known for so long. Not only is salt used in the preserving of food, not only does it enhance the flavor of food, but it also has an electrolyte ability. Right? It helps our bodies to function, especially when we're losing lots of moisture through sweat. This was very important in arid climates like Israel or in Africa, where salt actually was traded pound for pound with gold. In fact, Roman soldiers were paid in salt. It's where the term worth your weight in salt, are you worth your salt? Or maybe you've heard this one, your saltery or your salary. This idea of the salt having such value. Salt was also used in the sacrificial system of the Levitical system of the Jewish nation. Right? So salt has all sorts of value. It has all sorts of uses. And the way in which you get salt is quite interesting. In places like Kansas, you could actually dig down and you could mine salt. Apparently up in the Himalayas, you just climb up there and you break open a rock and there it is. Right? In other places around the world, you have to extract the salt, or you go through a process of purifying the salt through water, and then you have to evaporate the water, and the salt crystals are then left behind. And this is the process that was often used in Israel, where salt was abundant. Right? So this very valuable resource was abundant to the people of Israel. And Jesus' audience would have understood this. When he said, "You are the salt of the earth," they would have known what he meant. They would have understood the uses and the value of salt. Now notice Jesus doesn't say, "Are you salt? You need to be the salt of the earth." No, he says you are salt. The question is, what kind of salt are you? Are you a valuable salt? Do you add flavor to life? Do you enhance life? Do you preserve life? Do you give life? Salt has all these wonderful qualities. We are valuable like salt in the eyes of our God. We are salt. But the question is, have we lost our saltiness? Have we lost our usefulness? Have we allowed ourselves to become no longer pure and useful? And have we now become like the rest of the world? Good for nothing more than to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the salt of the earth. Be salty. Verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how will its saltiness be restored? You are no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under feet. So what kind of salt are you? What kind of salt are you? Do you have that uniqueness in the kingdom of God, that you have the ability to preserve, that you have the ability to enhance flavor? Similarly, starting here in verse 14, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill, it cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but upon a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. The land of Israel is kind of a rocky very shallow soil by and large. But this is a soil that the olive tree thrives in. It thrives in this shallow, rocky soil, and olive trees live for a great long time. And Israel is known for having a olive that is almost half in its weight oil. It's high in its oil content. As a result, Israel had an abundance of oil for a number of uses. Well, of course, we cook with olive oil. We love to eat olives, but there's also the value of the burning of olive oil for light in lamps. And that's really what I want to talk about this morning, is the value of the idea of the olive oil. All right? We live in a world where we go back here and we flip about 8 switches and we flood this entire room with light. We take it for granted. We walk into a room and we flip a switch and the whole area is lit. But imagine a world in which that wasn't the case, in which darkness was often the default, where you couldn't just flip a switch, where as soon as the sun went down, you were very limited in what you could do. Light was valuable. It was of a great value, and it was not nearly as bright as we enjoy today. So could you imagine taking light and hiding it under a basket? Could you imagine taking this wonderful, bright burning lamp and shielding it and relegating its value, its usefulness to a corner? If you had light and it was dark, then you put it upon a stand. It gives light to the whole house. It allows you to see what is out there. One of the most natural fears that people have is the fear of darkness, the fear of being in the dark. But we're really not scared of the dark. What we're afraid of is what we don't know that's in the dark. We then have to face our own fears of what our imagination create within the darkness. But with light, what is unknown is revealed. It's no longer a figment of our imagination. It's no longer that monster hiding under our bed. It's nothing more than the clothes hangers or whatever it was that was casting a shadow, that had your brain filling in all sorts of scariness. Light reveals. Light brings comfort in darkness. Light shows what is true and what is not true. Light is of great value. And in the same way that Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, he says, you are the light of the world. The question is not, are you light? The question is, how bright is your light? And what are you doing with it? Are you bringing comfort to others with your light? As people of the kingdom, are you revealing truth? Are you showing what is and what is not? That's really the question we have to be asking ourselves, is what kind of light are we? What kind of salt are we? Are we revealing truth? Are we bringing comfort? Are we revealing the world for how it truly is? Jesus calls us to the way of the kingdom. And that way of the kingdom is so different from the way of the world. We don't come and force our way. It's not by might. It's not by political power. It's by a life of example lived before the world. That's how we transform the world. Letting our good deeds, our light, our salt shine, letting our saltiness be made known. The world tastes and it sees that we are good. It sees our good deeds. With the comfort that we have received from God, we give to others. That's what we're called to do. When we think about the Beatitudes, Jesus is calling his followers to a very different way of thinking, a very different set of standards and values. And he follows that up by saying, you are salt, you are light. Are you going to live this out? Or are you not? And don't miss that this would have seemed different to his audience's ears, because the very next thing that Jesus says in verse 17 is, do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. For I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass away from the law until it's all accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's how Jesus opens his sermon. Do not think I have come to abolish the law. I have not come to bring something brand new. I have not come to give you a new law. I have not come to set forth new standards. I have not come forward to create a new way to God. No. He says, instead, I have come to fulfill the law. How does Jesus fulfill the law? Well, first, prophecy, right? Prophecies about the Messiah have been made for decades and millennia at this point. And Jesus fulfills them. Their fulfillment, their completion is found in Jesus. He's the Messiah, the hope of David, the one who would reign forever and ever. He's here. He fulfills them in that way, but he also upholds and completes the law. The phrase we will hear again and again and again as we study the Sermon on the Mount is, in the next section, is, you have heard that it was said, but I say to you. Jesus is not saying, I bring you a new law. He says, you've heard that it's simple enough, it's easy enough for you not to murder. So you haven't murdered. Congratulations. But have you not hated your brother? You have heard that it was said, don't commit adultery. Have you committed adultery? No, I've avoided adultery. Great. But have you lusted in your heart? See, Jesus is getting at the heart of the law. He's getting to what really matters in the kingdom of God. Are you really following him, or are you just doing the bare minimum? Jesus is not removing the law. Jesus is raising the law to its true standard. See, we often see the law as this unobtainable standard that no one can achieve. For we all sin, we all fall short of the glory of God. Jesus says, look, the law was minimum standards. It was minimum standards. I'm not asking you to follow minimum standards. I'm asking you to be a person of the kingdom. A person of God who is seeking him and following him. It's not enough not to murder somebody. It's not enough not to commit adultery. I'm asking you not even to go that direction. So don't think I've come to abolish the law of the prophets. I haven't come to abolish them. I've come to fulfill them. I've come to raise the bar, raise the standard, and show you the true way of God. That's what he's going to get to. That's why his introduction is so radically different. He is warning all those who have come to hear this magnificent speaker that everyone is talking about. He is warning them, if you come and you listen, be warned, because I'm not going to call you to an easy way. I'm calling you to an upside-down kingdom that is different, radically different from the rest of the world. And it's going to cost you to follow me. It's going to mean that you change your lifestyle, your values, to follow me. He's calling us to be salt, to add flavor to life, to preserve life, to preserve and show the world what morality looks like, to bring life to a dying world that needs Jesus so desperately, that is trying to figure out, how do we live this life? We have the answer. If we stay unique, if we become people of the kingdom. And similarly, we are the light of the world. And light enhances and it reveals truth. Light is attracting. Right? We've all seen the movie, right? Or at least heard the quote, avoid the light, go into the light, bzz, right? That's what attracts bugs, right? They have to go into the light. They get mesmerized by the light. Light attracts. It comforts. Are you attracting others to God by your behavior, by your lifestyle? Are you living a life that, while it might be off-putting at first, people begin to see how you live and your values, and they say, you know what? I see the wisdom in what you're doing. I understand why you're doing that, but I don't. I want to more. And they begin to walk alongside us. They begin to live life with us. So this morning I ask you the simple question. Are you salt? And are you light? No, that's not the question. It's what kind of salt are you? And what kind of light are you? Are you allowing your light to shine, or are you hiding it? Are you allowing your saltiness to flavor life? Or has your saltiness become so diluted that it is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out, trampled underfoot? I hope and I pray that we are a people of the kingdom, that we allow our light and our salt to shine forth. And if there is any way that we can help you do that, we want to help you do that. We're calling you to that, but we're also here to help you do that. And if there's any way that we can assist you in your walk of faith, we invite you to come as we stand and as we sing.